Good evening. I'm David Morrison. Breaking news from Washington as President Donald Trump escalates his rhetoric against Canada, marking another turbulent day in North American relations. Opening segment. In an unprecedented shift, Canada finds itself at a critical crossroads as Trump's return forces a rethinking of its energy strategy. Prime Minister Mark Carney, despite leading a caretaker government during elections, must respond to mounting U.S. threats and tariffs. Main story. The old relationship of steadily deepening integration with the United States is over, declared analyst Margaret Thompson. We're witnessing the end of an era where American economic leadership was taken for granted. Today's developments saw Canada and the EU announcing retaliatory tariffs, countering Trump's aggressive economic stance. The response signals a pivot in Canadian energy policy, with implications that could reshape North American trade for decades. For over a century, Canada has directed its energy resources primarily to U.S. markets. However, this arrangement appears to be crumbling under renewed trade tensions. We're seeing a strategic repositioning, explains Dr. James Anderson, energy expert at the University of Toronto. Canada is actively pursuing partnerships with the EU and China, marking a departure from its traditional U.S.-focused export strategy. This transformation extends beyond trade. Internal politics, indigenous rights, and environmental policies will be impacted by this strategic shift. The move represents what analysts call a coming-of-age moment for Canadian energy independence. Analysis. The implications are far-reaching. As Canada diversifies its energy exports, new infrastructure projects and international partnerships become critical. These changes must balance against domestic concerns and environmental commitments. Stay tuned for more updates. For NewsHour, I'm David Morrison. Here's your 1875 character news story. Good evening. I'm bringing you an in-depth look at a pivotal shift in North American energy dynamics. Canada, long considered America's reliable energy partner, is now charting a bold new course that could reshape continental relations. For decades, the story of Canadian-American energy partnership has been one of mutual dependency and trust. Since the 1950s, Canada has been the cornerstone of U.S. energy security, providing steady streams of oil, natural gas, and hydroelectric power. This relationship, much like a long-standing marriage, has weathered numerous storms, but now faces unprecedented challenges. Think back to the 1970s oil crisis. When global markets were in chaos, Canada stood as America's stable energy lifeline. This partnership was later cemented through landmark agreements. The 1989 Free Trade Agreement and NAFTA in 1994, which essentially created a borderless energy market between the two nations. But here's where things get interesting, folks. The 2000s brought new complications. As Canada developed its oil sands, a perfect storm began brewing. Environmental concerns in the U.S., growing public opposition to pipeline projects, and indigenous rights movements created a complex web of challenges. The Keystone XL pipeline became more than just an infrastructure project. It transformed into a symbol of changing times. Under the Obama administration, what was once a straightforward approval process became a political battleground, highlighting the delicate balance between economic interests and environmental stewardship. This brings us to today's crucial development: Canada's strategic pivot. With recent U.S. tariffs raising eyebrows in Ottawa, Canadian leaders are seriously reconsidering their nation's energy export strategy. The question now isn't just about where to sell Canadian energy, but how to maintain sovereignty while balancing environmental goals. Prime Minister Mark Carney's government faces a delicate balancing act, maintaining crucial U.S. ties while diversifying export markets to reduce vulnerability to American political winds. This shift could represent the biggest transformation in North American energy relations since the 1970s. In a significant shift in North American energy relations, Canada's dependence on U.S. energy exports, historically over 95%, faces new scrutiny. This reassessment stems from volatile U.S. policy decisions, particularly evident in the changing approval status of major energy projects across administrations. Canadian Energy Minister Jonathan Wilkinson has suggested potential retaliatory measures in response to trade disputes, including restricting oil exports to the United States or implementing export taxes. If we're discussing non-tariff retaliation, we might consider supply restrictions or implementing our own tariffs, extending to minerals, Wilkinson stated. Canada's position as the primary supplier of 4 million barrels of oil daily to the U.S. market makes these considerations significant for both nations. These supplies are crucial for Midwest refineries. However, this stance has met resistance within Canada, particularly from Alberta's leadership. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has emphasized maintaining good relations with their southern neighbors. This is not something we would do to our friends and allies. That option is not on the table. Zero, Smith declared, highlighting internal divisions regarding retaliatory measures. The situation stems from President Trump's decision to impose 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports, which prompted Canada to consider various defensive measures. This mirrors global patterns where nations are reassessing their economic dependencies, similar to how political turbulence has influenced European energy policies. The Canadian government's consideration of including critical minerals in potential retaliatory measures adds complexity, particularly given China's position in the global supply chain. This situation could reshape one of North America's most stable economic relationships, with Canada potentially diversifying its energy export markets, representing a significant shift in continental energy dynamics. Here's a 1875-character news story based on the provided content. In a significant shift in North American energy relations, Canada is exploring decisive measures to reduce its dependence on U.S. markets, reminiscent of how the former Soviet Republic adapted its energy strategy in recent years. This comes as tensions escalate following the implementation of a 25% retaliatory tariff on metals and restrictions on $20 billion worth of U.S. products. Canadian Energy Minister Jonathan Wilkinson acknowledged the complexity of the situation, noting that while redirecting exports isn't simple, the trade relationship remains crucial for both nations. However, this hasn't stopped Canada from considering additional sanctions on critical U.S. products, including ethanol, a move that could significantly impact U.S. farmers and Canada's clean fuel objectives. The upcoming April 28 elections have placed energy infrastructure at the center of political discourse. Prime Minister Mark Carney, leading the Liberal Party, has prioritized modernizing the country's energy infrastructure. This strategy mirrors recent global trends, where nations are rapidly developing independent energy capabilities to reduce external dependencies. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has proposed an even more ambitious approach with his Canada First National Energy Corridor. This comprehensive plan envisions an integrated network of pipelines, railways, and energy transmission lines, a project that could fundamentally reshape Canada's energy landscape. Enbridge CEO Greg Eel has expressed concerns about restricting oil exports to the U.S., calling it unwise given current infrastructure limitations. The situation highlights Canada's challenging position, balancing the need for energy independence with existing infrastructural constraints. This transformation in Canadian energy policy reflects a broader global trend, where nations are reassessing their energy partnerships and infrastructure needs. The outcome of these decisions could reshape North American energy dynamics for decades to come, potentially creating new opportunities for international energy trade and domestic development. In a dramatic shift reshaping North American energy politics, Canada is making bold moves to break free from its economic dependency on the United States. Currently, 98% of Canadian oil flows south of the border, becoming increasingly problematic as trade tensions escalate. We're effectively handcuffed to a single customer, explains energy analyst Marcus Thompson. It's like having a store with only one buyer who can dictate all the terms. The situation has reached a critical point, with 14 of Canada's top energy CEOs taking collective action. In an open letter to the government, they demand regulatory reforms, streamlined approvals, and enhanced indigenous partnerships. Prime Minister Mark Carney has responded with a $3.5 billion trade diversification corridor fund for infrastructure development, including ports, airports, and railways. This signals Canada's intention to reduce U.S. market dependence. This isn't just about diversification, says Canadian Energy Minister Wilkinson. Everything is on the table. His comments suggest potential sanctions against the United States might be considered. The push towards new markets, particularly China and the EU, represents a strategic pivot that could reshape global energy trade. Plans for new LNG terminals and infrastructure improvements are underway to facilitate Asian market access. However, this strategy has sparked internal tensions. While some leaders advocate for diversification, others warn about alienating Canada's largest trading partner. The debate intensifies as Trump-era tariffs continue affecting Canadian industries. We're witnessing a historic moment in Canadian energy policy, notes Dr. Sarah Chen from the University of Toronto. The question isn't whether Canada will diversify its energy exports, but how quickly and at what cost. This strategic repositioning comes as global energy markets deal with supply chain disruptions and shifting alliances. The success of Canada's plan could determine North American energy independence and reshape international trade patterns for decades. Breaking news: Canada's energy independence strategy reshapes global markets. Canada is rapidly expanding its liquefied natural gas (LNG) export capabilities. Current daily exports of 0.5 billion cubic meters are expected to quadruple within the next decade, positioning Canada as a major global energy supplier. Three key projects are driving this transformation. The Shell-led LNG Canada facility in British Columbia, starting operations in 2025, will export 14 million tons of LNG annually to Asian markets, serving China, Japan, and South Korea. The Goldboro LNG project in Nova Scotia will serve European markets, with Germany securing long-term agreements. This helps European nations diversify their energy sources away from Russia. The Cedar LNG project marks Canada's first major energy partnership with indigenous governments, setting new standards for community participation in infrastructure projects. The Energy East Pipeline project has gained new momentum amid changing geopolitical landscapes. The pipeline would connect Alberta's oil resources with Atlantic coast refineries, enhancing export capabilities. These developments align with the EU's strategy to partner with democratic nations for energy security. As tensions continue near Russia, Western nations increasingly view Canada as a reliable energy partner. Industry analysts see this expansion as both an economic opportunity and strategic realignment of global energy partnerships. With pressure on traditional supply chains, Canada's role as a major energy exporter could significantly influence international energy politics. Canada's strategic position, with access to both Pacific and Atlantic shipping routes, offers alternatives for nations seeking to diversify their energy sources. These developments mark a historic shift in Canada's energy export strategy, transitioning from U.S. market dependence to global energy trade leadership. In a significant shift of national energy strategy, Canada is taking bold steps to reshape its export landscape, moving away from its reliance on U.S. markets. Data from 2024 shows Canada exports 4.6 million barrels of crude oil daily, with 98% flowing to American markets. The natural gas sector shows similar patterns, with 95% of exports going to U.S. consumers. A transformative plan is now in motion. Canadian authorities are pursuing diversification through new LNG terminals on both coasts. This initiative aims to reduce U.S. market dependence to below 75% by 2030, marking a historic shift in Canadian energy policy. The catalyst for this change was the Trump administration's aggressive trade policies and tariffs. These actions have altered Canadian public opinion regarding energy independence. A recent poll showed 77% of Canadians support public funding for a new pipeline connecting Alberta's oil fields to eastern Canada's refineries. This pipeline would decrease U.S. market reliance, enhance domestic refining capabilities, and provide security against trade disruptions. The project responds to growing concerns about economic vulnerability. However, this energy transformation faces economic challenges. The survey revealed 80% of Canadians are concerned about the federal budget deficit, projected at 48 billion Canadian dollars this year. As the April 28 election approaches, voters are weighing both energy independence and fiscal responsibility. This balance between energy security and economic stability has become central to the upcoming election. Candidates must address voter expectations for increased energy independence and responsible fiscal management. The outcome could reshape Canada's energy landscape and its relationship with its southern neighbor. The situation reflects global trends toward energy sovereignty and market diversification, similar to challenges faced by other nations where energy independence became crucial for national security. Good evening, viewers. This is your Evening Insight Report. I'm bringing you the latest developments in Canadian politics and energy policy. In a significant shift reshaping North American energy dynamics, Canadian leadership is navigating a complex political landscape while trying to reduce U.S. energy market dependency. Prime Minister Carney and opposition leader Paleva are engaged in a race for public support, each making substantial promises to voters. Carney's administration has unveiled an ambitious plan, promising billions in tax cuts and infrastructure investments. This comes as Canada reassesses its traditional energy partnerships, similar to the northern Black Sea region's recent economic restructuring. Let's look at the numbers. Historically, over 95% of Canadian energy exports have gone to the United States. But times are changing. Two major alternatives are emerging. First, there's China, representing a rapidly expanding market with massive growth potential. Think of it as opening a new frontier for Canadian resources. Second, the European Union offers what analysts call a more stable, values-aligned partnership. The EU pathway also aligns with environmental protection goals, something many viewers have expressed concern about. This matters because Canada's choice will impact every aspect of national policy, from foreign relations to indigenous rights, from environmental protection to household energy bills. Key factors to watch include infrastructure development timelines, indigenous consultation processes, environmental impact assessments, international trade negotiations. This strategic pivot represents Canada's most significant energy policy shift in decades, comparable to the transformation along Russia's western border. Stay tuned for continuous updates on this developing story. These decisions will affect not just current trade relations, but generations to come. For Evening Insight Report, this is your host signing off. Don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth coverage of these developments.